What's a big industry secret that isn't supposed to be known by the general public? Ask to have the late fee waived. I literally cannot do anything with it until you specifically ask. So you have a late fee of $30 on this. Gee, that's a lot. Why is it so much? That's the late fee we have. I do apologize for the inconvenience. Well, I guess I have to pay it then. Okay, so your bill is $150. Do you realize how much that is? Yes, and I do apologize for the inconvenience. Well, can you do something about it? Yes, now I can because you asked. Please stop making me feel guilty that you paid your bill late. Edit. Since so many are asking, I work in insurance for business owners. I'm sorry I'm not the cell phone / bank / mortgage / hospital, etc. company. If it makes y'all feel better, I'd waive all of your late fees. Story 2. If you get involuntarily bumped from a flight, you can get paid out 200 to 400% of the flight's cost back, depending on how late you get to your destination. If this happens to you, they'll offer you a bunch of vouchers, but be persistent and they'll pay you out. If the airline arranges substitute transportation that's scheduled to arrive at your destination between 1 and 2 hours after your original arrival time, between 1 and 4 hours on international flights, the airline must pay you an amount equal to 200% of your one-way fare to your final destination that day, with a $650 maximum. If the substitute transportation is scheduled to get you to your destination more than 2 hours later, 4 hours internationally, or if the airline does not make any substitute travel arrangements for you, the compensation doubles. 400% of your one-way fare, $1,300 maximum. Edit. When a flight is overbooked, they come over the PA and start handing out a few $100 vouchers and put you on the next flight. If you take one of these vouchers, you have voluntarily given up your seat. If no one takes them the first round, they keep on going up in voucher amounts. But eventually, if no one takes them, they're going to have to involuntarily bump people off the plane. If this happens to you, make sure you follow the above rules. Personally, in my experience, I had a SWA flight from Phoenix to Chicago on 12/23 at 10 a.m. They came over the PA offering a $300 voucher and a spot on the next flight. I had nothing special to do except hang out with family, so I took it and they put me on the 12 p.m. flight. 30 minutes before boarding that flight, the same thing happens. Well, I'll take another $300, and they put me on the 3 p.m. flight. Guess what? It happens again, but this time they gave me $500, and I'm on the 6 p.m. flight. And you guessed it, they asked for volunteers again, and I got another $500, and now I'm on the 8 p.m. flight. So I spent a day in the airport and sampled all the great dining options at Sky Harbor and ended up with $1,600 in SWA credits to use over the next year. I was able to go on 3 trips with my girlfriend without paying for flights. Moving forward, if I ever travel before Thanksgiving or Christmas, I'm booking the earlier flight and racking up the vouchers. Edit 2. If your flight is canceled due to weather or mechanical issues, you're SOL, except them getting you on the next available flight. Flights are frequently canceled when there isn't enough seats sold, and most of the time, the airlines say it was a mechanical problem so they don't have to give you anything. So from personal experience, I can totally back this up. If you book earlier flights and they need to clear up a couple of seats, absolutely volunteer. The compensation is like otherworldly. I remember one time I had to go on a flight from Los Angeles to Atlanta, flying out of LA, and I had an early morning flight, and obviously those are in high demand, and they basically asked if anyone, would volunteer to give up their seat on the particular flight that I was scheduled to board on, and I did, and I got on the next flight, which took off 45 minutes later, except the plane that I was originally going to get on had a delay and ended up not taking off for another 2 hours. So I ended up ultimately getting to leave earlier, get to my destination faster, and the upgrade included a first class flight. So I got to fly first class and I got $200 redeemable on my next flight. So my gosh, these airlines absolutely hook you up if you take one for the team. Story 3. Only about 20% of the people working here are actually properly competent and really understand what they're meant to be doing, let alone why. Which industry? Every industry. Source? I've worked in a variety of jobs, temping across a huge range of industries over the last decade. Edited to add, this doesn't really apply to any kind of position that could be better described as a vocation than a job. Story 4. Monday's chowder is the weekend seafood leftovers. Edit. To answer some questions. Yes, this is just one example of the overall theme in most restaurants. Zero waste. Any veg trimmings, chicken trimmings, beef bones get boiled to stock. Leftover entrees are usually tomorrow's open-face lunch Sammy special. Plastic containers are cut in half so everything is able to be scraped out. Second only to quality and consistency of food. Zero waste is the credo to live by. Edit 2. Never really meant this as a bad thing, more so something people don't realize with restaurants. To answer a few questions, no, I've never seen Big Short, so I don't really get the reference. Anthony Bourdain is one of many chefs who will tell you this. He is, in my eyes, one of the best celebrity chefs out there, but any chef will tell you this. Repetition and time management are 3 key factors in growing as a cook. Yes, corporate restaurants waste a lot of food. They are often sous crazy, as well as make enough revenue from frozen processed dishes that at the end of the day, it's cheaper to throw out than worry about legal ramifications. And last but not least, to the guy who said cutting plastic containers in half is worse for the environment, thank you. I'm still chuckling. Story 5. Hospitals and doctors' office bills in the US can be negotiated, and many will offer huge cash discounts if you pay at the time of service. But once the insurance gets billed, there's much less room for negotiation. If your bill gets applied to the insurance deductible, then the facility, by law, is supposed to collect the full amount that was applied to the deductible from you. Also, if there's a copay, the facility, by law, is supposed to collect that as well. For the average person on a high deductible plan, $1,000 plus, you'd have to get cancer or be in a huge trauma for the insurance to kick in any meaningful payment. Insider advice: when you make an appointment at a doctor's office, ask if they have a point of service discount. Also, if you go to a hospital, don't let them know you have insurance until after they give you the bill. Do the negotiation first, then do the math and see if it's cheaper to pay out of pocket. If not, the facility has 6 months to bill your insurance after the date of service. Story 6. I worked in the grocery business for an embarrassing amount of time, doing everything from unloading trucks to running register to middle management. That empty spot on the shelf? The product is not in the back. It never will be in the back. Most stores today have adopted a truck-to-shelf model to streamline various things. The back room is used for special items, sales, and the like. If regular product is sitting back there, then something has gone wrong with the ordering process. That clerk you asked is going to go back there, stand beside the door, and play on their phone for a minute. They have neither the time nor the energy to navigate the maze of the back room for a product that shouldn't be back there. So next time you wonder, how come nothing's ever in the back? It's because the business model has changed to be that way. Edit. Alright, I get it. But that's not true at my store. My inbox is full of that. I'm just saying, I worked at 3 separate stores for just shy of a decade, and they were all either truck to shelf or aggressively moving towards that model. In simple terms, it allows for cost reduction by reducing the size of the night shift and eliminating some morning stock positions as well. Having overstock sitting in the back and becoming forgotten is not very cost efficient. Edit 2. I realize that fresh departments, dairy, meat, etc., usually have fresh stuff out back. That's because they need to have product constantly rotating out to stay under the date. I tend to not think of fresh departments because most of my time was dealing with proper grocery, what I guess you'd call dry goods. I also realize that bread and beer are the same way. But guess what? Outside vendors come in and deal with bread and beer. I never had to even remotely touch the stuff in the years of working in the business, so I don't really count that. Story 7. Whether this is known by the general public is probably debatable. I suppose many people have had this thought at some point, or have had bad experiences, but the truth is far worse than most people suspect. A lot of industry professionals are complete idiots. Lawyers, doctors, financial specialists, brokers, engineers, architects, chemists, and bankers, even IT. And I don't mean in a what a moron kind of way. I mean, they're dangerously stupid, lacking in common sense or the usual degree of awareness most humans employ in their daily lives, and how they manage to secure full-time employment is utterly baffling. Most of them simply do not care anymore. They've completely checked out. Their minds shut down the day they obtain their license, certification, contract position, or whatever. They just phone it in, day after day. Always look up professionals' reviews before hiring them. Word of mouth is still the best method of figuring out who to retain. Never give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't be afraid to question them. And never trust them completely. And if they can't handle any of what I just wrote, F them. They're not real professionals. Story 8. If you have a Bank of America credit or debit card and your card gets declined and you call and find out it was because of a data breach, the fraud department that you speak to is forced by the bank to tell you that they can't see where or when the data breach occurred. But we can see it. It shows us right there on our computer. It's really effing annoying for everyone involved. other than the bank apparently, since they're the ones that enforce this. It's a major problem because your card gets completely shut off right there over the phone, and we have to send in a request to have a completely new card and number sent to you. Then you wait about 2 weeks to receive it in the mail and have to change everything you pay your bills on to the new card number. But if you go back into the store with that new card that had the data breach and they still haven't resolved the problem with the breach, then your card will be shut off again. Rinse and repeat. Please try not to get too angry at the people you talk to on the phone. They don't work at BOA. They're just lowly call center workers. And they're fired if they tell you where it happened. The bank is saving their own ass to not piss off big companies that don't want that info to leak into the public. Story 9. McGraw-Hill makes practically every textbook allowed in America's school. At the end of every year, they throw away the tens of thousands of books for the tax write-off because it's going to a recycling plant. I'm talking textbooks for K through 12, college books of every type, teacher editions, and class sets of short stories and books for kids in the process of learning to read. A normal textbook costs a school $60 to $80 a pop, but they throw enough away to educate every child in Africa. When I worked at the recycling plant, I wasn't allowed to take them because it was considered illegal to distribute them. I truly lost all hope for the future of humanity after that, and quit my job. The place they're sent to is called Medina Recycling in Northeast Ohio. I seriously want to find a way to make this big news and trash McGraw-Hill all over it. It is also a 2-month period that is Medina Recycling's largest contract for profit. Story 10. In Britain, anyone that watches TV has to buy a TV license. It's how the BBC remains commercial-free. Well, for decades, the government has pushed the notion that technology exists, in the form of TV detector vans, that can tell if a non-licensed payer is watching live TV in some way. As you see from this public information film, it's said they have more powerful detection vans. It would appear that this is total and utter bollocks. What actually happens is the TV license is a form of census, and houses that don't have one are sent letters as rote. The two vans they have to maintain the ruse may be more powerful just because they have engines with more horsepower than the previous two transit vans with theatrical antennas sticking from the roof. This has been a facet of British life for decades. The notion that there's a government department with technicians and drivers and managers that do TV detection. Yet the jobs never get advertised at the job center. Nobody in decades has ever been on a TV game show and given their occupation as TV detector van driver. We have people that served in the most secret parts of the military and government, in company boardrooms that have written tell-all books, but never one from TV detection staff. That's because it's hard to have job vacancies for and interviews from, and exposés of people that don't exist. Story 11. Poultry industry. When hatched, a chick costs 25 cents. Over its lifespan of only about 30 days, it consumes about $1 of feed, which is the largest cost to the company. The feed. No steroids or anything, just clever selective breeding have created birds with oversized breasts, which is where the money is. Within 3 hours, the bird is killed, defeathered, eviscerated, and chilled down to under 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the magical degree at which microbial growth slows or stops. The chilling process takes the longest, nearly 2 hours in super chilled water. That's where up to 5% retained water comes from. Certain companies add chemicals to promote more water retention. Every carcass is USDA inspected. Every single one. Foster Farms has the capacity to process 2 million chickens each day, and they're not even in the top 3 poultry manufacturers. After chilling, the birds are then cut up and packaged except the breast meat, which is aged, which is a fancy term for holding them for at least 16 hours to continue to retain water. That crap is sold at a premium, so more water equals more money. Chicken is good for up to 16 days, depending if the cold chain has been maintained, kept under 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Very little is left to waste. The feet are mostly shipped to China. They can't get enough of them. Blood is used in fertilizer. Feathers are often ground up and fed back to the birds. Look for packaging that reads vegetarian diet or no animal byproducts to avoid that soylent green crap. You know, they say you never want to know how the sausage is made, and this is kind of gross. Like, even though you know it's a formality of, like, preparing meat for consumption. Like, grinding up the feathers and feeding them back to the chickens, and then, I don't know, that's just... Had no idea. Thanks for sharing. Or not. I could have gone without knowing that. Story 12. Costco refills cartridges for $7. You can usually refill at least twice before you have to buy a new one. FYI, do not buy liquid ink printers if you don't use it a lot. The ink will dry up, your printer head will clog, and you will not get much printing out of it. Despite the initial higher cost of laser printers, it saves you a lot of money in the long term. Laser printers use powder ink and doesn't have any of the clogging or durability problems. The best inkjet I've ever owned is the Canon Pro 100. It's a really good printer and doesn't clog as often. The cleaning cycles on it actually works. It also prints amazing photos, relative to its price, including black and white. The ink cartridges on it lasted far longer than I expected. Still crap compared to laser printers. The color accuracy on it is almost spot on out of the box. If you're just looking for a cheap laser printer without all the features, look into the Brother brand. It does very well with printing reliably for being so cheap. HP Instant Ink was mentioned. It will save you money on color photos since it goes by page counts. $5 for 100 pages, $10 for 300 pages. However, for black and white printing, it's expensive compared to a Brother TN315BK toner cartridge that yields 6,000 pages for $80. Keep in mind, only select HP printers are eligible for Instant Ink, and they're not what I would use for printing photos, so that service is pointless for me. Calibration and cleaning cycles wasting lots of ink is true. The cleaning cycle is needed if you don't use your ink often enough, causing it to dry at the print heads. When the printer cleans it, it pushes a bunch of fresh ink out to force the dry ink. That wasted ink goes into another cartridge. Most people don't even realize this has to be changed after a while. This is mainly why your inkjet printer cartridge that's supposed to have 300 page yield can end up printing only 50 if you only use it once a month. I'm well aware that it's even cheaper than Costco refilling myself. I don't want to buy the tools or deal with the possibility of getting ink on myself. I'm sure most people would rather not deal with that and spend a few dollars. Costco also uses good quality ink. Trust me when I say using cheap ink will be a pain in the ass. If you choose to refill yourself, always buy the high quality ink. Normally, it's better to refill the OEM cartridges instead of the aftermarket ones. Who uses home printers anymore? People who don't have an office job, wants higher quality prints, wants the convenience, don't want to pass their personal expense onto their employer, don't want to deal with public facilities, hassles, and problems, old computers, wrong/old applications, waiting, not the right printers, etc., prefer reading on paper, realize swans can be gay. If you're looking for a cheap monochrome printer, then try the Brother HL L2340DW. It's currently my favorite cheap laserjet. Only $90 and comes with wireless as well as duplex printing. HP loves to charge you big money for this feature. The OEM high-yield 2600 page toner is only $45, and I'm sure third-party toners are even cheaper. So for under $150, you can print for 5+ years if you print less than 50 pages per month, and most likely no repairs or maintenance needed. When your toner gets low and starts fading, take it out and shake it. It'll probably go for another 50 to 100 pages. Never shake a baby, but always shake a toner. If you're looking to print an amazing, brilliant photo, take a look at metallic paper. I found it on Red River. It's my go-to photo paper, but it's expensive. I use a Sony A7R11 with Zeiss 55mm and 35mm. The combination of the Zeiss lens making the color pop in the metallic paper gives the photo almost a 3D effect. Some people will have problems with laser printers tripping your circuits on startup, as it requires a lot of power to heat up and shoot lasers like Star Wars. If that happens, try plugging your laser printer into your kitchen outlets. Circuits in the kitchen are often built to be able to handle more power for good reasons. I know my kitchen has 20A versus 15A for my living room. For basic color printing, I recommend $200 Brother HL3170CDW digital color printer with wireless networking and duplex. This is a laser printer and will be a workhorse. There's a cheaper version with no duplex printing for $178. If you want a professional quality photo printer without paying the price, I still have not seen a better printer than Canon Pixma Pro 100. There are people having problems with the feed or the heads malfunctioning, so take that into account. However, I've had the printer for about 2 years and it has not failed me once. If you have a local micro center, then buy it there and get the no hassle insurance for peace of mind. Else, buy it on Amazon and return it if you see problems. The ink cartridges are expensive, but the yield is decent. There are seasonal sales that will drop the price to the $200 to $300 range. Nothing performs this good in this price range. The next step up would be over $1,000, and that's a massive leap for most people, including enthusiasts. This is my opinion, and I'm sure some people will disagree. For those asking about office printers for actual office use, not just the name, then I would go with HP. If budget is a problem, then Brother or Canon is good. I don't like Epson as I did not have a good experience with them, just my anecdotal evidence. You will find these printers on the business section of their website. But what's more important is knowing duty cycles of office printers. You will find this on the product page or the product manual/info PDF you can find on their website. Just note, I like HP for business simply because it's quick and easy to get service/support/parts if you need it. They seem to have printers for every type of office and many vendors to choose from. This is their market after all. There are 3 important numbers: maximum monthly duty cycles, recommended max average duty cycles, lifetime duty cycles. The most useful number should be recommended max average duty cycles. If you do not know how much you print, you can estimate by counting how many boxes of paper your office went through. The most accurate way is to get that statistics right on the current computer. All of the HP at my office can print out these stats, and I was able to accurately and confidently recommend upgrades to our printers. Our printers were breaking down because it was used way more than the recommended average. We did an upgrade and load balance, assign X number of users per printer. Can you sell empty cartridges? Yes, you can, but I don't know how you can do it as an individual. But I do know those people/businesses that collect them from you will sell it to the third party that refills them and resell it back to you at a discounted price. The only exception I know of where a business, usually specialty shop/site, will buy it from you directly is really expensive cartridges for high-end photo printers. They also refill and resell. They also require you to send in your empty cartridge or you pay the core charge. It's the same thing AutoZone does when you buy parts like alternators. For those new aspiring photographers, and there seems to be a dime a dozen these days, a good printer is as important as choosing the right photo paper. Also, equally important, which many ignored, is downloading and choosing the right ICC printer profiles, or you can create your own. There are ICC profiles for both OEM papers and third-party photo papers. And god damn it, get the right monitor, calibrate it, and calibrate your printer as well. But like I said earlier, the Canon Pro 100 needed by far the least calibration of any prosumer printer I've ever used. Oh my god. I did not know that it was possible to be that passionate about ink and printers. I actually had to take a break and go back and do a little bit of math there. Because as I'm reading this, I'm like, my God, this guy is just rambling on and on. That was 3 pages of the script and 1,400 words total. This guy literally posted an essay on Reddit about ink and how to refill it. Not knocking the passion, but man, I have to be probably the only person that actually read that post all the way through, and that's because I have to. So, listeners, you're welcome. And also, my personal biggest takeaway from that, one thing that actually did stand out is that I had no idea that outlets in the kitchen are specifically made to sustain stronger surges than outlets throughout the rest of the house. So that's a good tidbit of information. The rest of it, I'm not going to lie, I'm not knocking the passion. That was all a bunch of gibberish to me. I have no idea what he was talking about. But maybe it'll help someone else out. Anyway, let's move on. Story 13. Disclaimer. I'm someone in the alcohol industry, and most of this information that I have amassed over the years of talking to other industry professionals who may or may not represent those brands. There's no secret to low-calorie drinking. Alcohol equals calories. All light beer is just lower in alcohol, because the amount of alcohol in a beer is relative to the amount of fermentable sugars put into it. I assume it's cheaper to make. You pay the same for Budweiser as Bud Light, despite a 0.8% difference. Then, because it's lower in alcohol, you drink more. That means you're also buying more. This is largely why every light beer has been pushed and allowed to flourish, while the original beers are in decline. There are some differences, however. Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, and Guinness are all 4.2% in alcohol, while they each contain 92, 110, and 125 calories per 12-ounce serving, respectively. Personally, I just don't see the value in paying more for less calories when you can just buy regular old Budweiser, add about 10% water, and create your own watered-down beer and retain this logic. So many products created in Europe are changed to be sent to America. Mostly, they just make them sweeter. This goes for inexpensive items such as Strongbow, who, after finally asking themselves why they're trying to sell a dry English cider in the US, came out with Strongbow Golden Apple, which is much sweeter. The same goes all the way up to things like high-end, but not really, champagnes such as Moet, whose entry level is about $40 non-vintage in V. Imperial Brut has a higher dosage, more sugar, for the US than its European counterpart. It's not even a brute by contemporary standards, which Americans also don't know/care about. Speaking of NV champagne, there was once a time when the proud French folk would age all their NV champagnes to the same high standards as vintage champagnes, which must be aged at least 3 years. Then they realized Americans not only don't care, in fact they prefer it with less toasty oak. So now you're paying for a Veuve Clicquot that's been aged for half the time, yet you're paying the same amount. Also, the vodka/rum/whiskey loves to push flavors on you because up until the advent of Captain Morgan, liquors had to be 80 proof, 40%. Captain Morgan argued that because they were diluting it with flavors, it should be less. Now you pay the same amount for 70 proof, 35%, flavored spirits, or sometimes even lower for light vodkas. And those handcrafted artisan whiskeys, produced by large whiskey mills in the Midwest and Canada, then sold to a third party to be bottled and marketed. Granted, this has always happened with blended Scotch, American whiskeys, and Caribbean rums, but it's entirely different when Four Roses is making 100% of Belight for Diageo. And if you ever want to break your lush aunt's heart, take her to Italy to the Santa Margherita Pignagriogio wine estate sometime. Except you can't, because it doesn't exist. It comes from proprietorially sourced vineyards from wherever and then marketed as expensive. And everything else that's popular has at some point been bought out by some massive parent company and then had costs slashed to pieces right before being marketed through the roof for the same price or more. Story 14. Don't know how much of a secret it is, but when I was studying CS and game dev in school, this was something I learned that turned me away from working in the game dev industry. In game dev, there's a thing called crunch time, where the project is approaching the date it needs to be completed by in order to be released. During this time, employees are basically expected to work heavily extended hours. 80-hour weeks are not uncommon. Keep in mind, this is all unpaid OT. It's been proven that these sorts of hours are actually detrimental to a project's quality due to the constantly exhausted state of those working on it. Game developers typically don't have pay equivalent to other jobs with similar skill sets either. It's truly a labor of love. As much as I want to make games, I value my free time, and I want to have free time for my family when I have one, so those kinds of schedules just wouldn't work. I long for the day when publishers will be run by gamers and game developers, not businessmen looking solely to turn a profit. Story 15. A lot of people believe a lot of crazy crap that simply isn't true, and I'm not sure if it's the consumer or if it's the industry who propagate the myth sometimes. If they can offer it at a discount for 1 month of the year, quite often it's because you're paying over the odds the other 11. Of course, end-of-line sales are what they are, but sales are normally profitable. Diamonds are not rare. That was a lie by this De Beers company you might have heard of. If she's prepared to leave you over a diamond, she doesn't really love you. Deal with it. Breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. That was a lie by this Kellogg guy you might have heard of. The secret ingredient is probably a spice, and probably paprika or cumin at that. If it isn't, it probably is salt or sugar or MSG. Gold is not inherently valuable, and its actual open market value is actually far more volatile than people assume. Turning it off and on again is not just an excuse. It puts the machine into a known state, making diagnosis easier. That food is bad for you, and the people telling it to you don't care if you die from it, as long as you don't do it right here. Right now, where they have to deal with it. Most politicians actually believe what they're saying. You call it lying, but they don't think they are, or believe the truth you present is less important than the truths they present. It's disagreement, not corruption. Used car salesmen generally don't want to get bad reputations, and so don't want you to have regrets a month later. Stop assuming they don't care in all cases. Yes, there are bad apples, but most want you to come back again next time you're looking. Crappy lawyers are often good lawyers with crappy clients, or working in the confines of crappy laws. Most celebrities don't write their own books. Ghostwriting works for people who love to write, but can't make enough money getting published with their own works. The celebrities, the publisher, and the people who want to read about the lives of celebrities. So stop complaining about it. That car, handbag, watch, phone, laptop, whatever it is you've been lusting after, it won't help. It won't make you happier. It won't make you better at your job or fix the problems at home. The life in the advert won't become your life. The life you imagine will not happen. The only way to fix things is to love people more. Love is always the answer. And a couple of other bonus thoughts. It's not 10,000 hours that will make you brilliant. It's having the motivation to put in 10 hours a day for 1,000 days straight, or only 5 hours a day for 2,000 days. In any given profession, about a third of people will consider it a job and only a job, a third a career, and a third a calling. You'll be surprised to hear these ratios apply just as much for cleaners in hospitals as it does for the doctors in the same hospital. Story 16. Remember when you played that escape room game that one time and you got so close to escaping, but just barely ran out of time? Yeah, virtually every team gets to that point. The game pacing and structure is almost certainly designed that way, unless you're playing one of the really competitive, official franchise escape games. The problem is that escape room players almost always report that they had positive experiences if they think they just barely missed out on success, even if the game itself wasn't very good. So most companies, especially independent ones, require their in-room technicians to ensure that players reach a certain point in the game, either through hinting or suggestions, or sometimes even altering/removing puzzles altogether. An in-room technician who's good at their job will be able to help out in a way that makes it seem like it was the players who figured it all out, when in reality, they did virtually nothing. Unless you're a truly terrible team, or really annoying and pushy, you're almost guaranteed to just barely miss out on escaping. I wouldn't say this is necessarily a bad thing, but after working in escape rooms for about 3 months, I realized how truly artificial the majority of the experience is. Now, obviously this doesn't go for all escape games, but most escape companies are perfectly happy to sacrifice the integrity of the game for customer satisfaction and better reviews. Story 17. Many people view academia as this wonderful place where science trumps everything else and everyone spends their time doing the research they like, which is exceedingly rare. Doing a PhD really isn't about doing something new. I mean, sure, you still have to do a thesis and a whole lot of research, but that's not the main point. It's about being hazed. As a student, you possess all the risk and none of the power, and learning the politics and bullcrap of academia. It's about coming to grips with the fact that the research you do isn't really all that important. It's just a small piece of the puzzle. The rest is politics. Likewise, being a professor isn't about teaching. Teaching is at the absolute bottom of the priority list. Hell, being too good a teacher can sometimes bite you in the ass as the department now assumes you're spending too much time on it and not enough time on bringing money to the university. Grant money and sucking up are how you get tenure at most universities. Story 18. You're so stupid you'll buy anything if they spin/market it correctly. 20 years ago, yellow and brown diamonds were considered so low grade that they were literally jokes. Now they call them champagne and chocolate diamonds. And suddenly, the low-quality stones they couldn't give away are hot stuff. Lobster was once considered a trash dish, only suitable for the poor, servants, and prisoners. Then the railroads came in, and they started serving this trash fish to people inland who had never seen it before like it was a delicacy, since they didn't know it was dirt cheap. And a delicacy it became. It's a Wonderful Life, the classic Christmas movie about the angel getting his wings. It was a cheap little nothing movie until the owners forgot to renew the rights on it and fell into public domain. Stations started playing it all the time at Christmas because it was free, and people thought it was a tradition, and it became one. Same with Christmas in general. It was a drunken festival, more like Mardi Gras, until Macy's department store rebranded it, along with Coca-Cola, as a family-friendly gift-giving holiday that had a long history it never did, and people ate it up. Story 19. A few things about auto and home insurance. 1. After a claim, your settlement is always negotiable. You don't have to accept the first number they give you. A good adjuster is someone who can get customers to accept low payouts. I once heard a coworker say about an adjuster, she was so good, she was a total female dog, but she could get someone to accept $500 for their dead kid. 2. Complain, complain, complain. Even if it's your fault, it doesn't matter. Most effective methods are social media, email CEO, attorney general, or Department of Insurance. All these get high priority. A good 70% to 80% of the time will give you what you want just to shut you up and be able to report that the issue is resolved. 3. Not so much a secret, but worth mentioning. Insurance companies are regulated to death. Every single thing has to be approved by the Department of Insurance. Your policy, every letter you receive, your premium, your discounts, all of it. All states have different, ever-evolving, and often contradictory regulations, and insurance workers, for the most part, are random people using outdated systems who barely care and just want to meet whatever metrics they have to so they don't get fired. Story 20. From a pharmacy perspective, most people don't understand how dietary supplements are regulated by the FDA. They're basically special food, not a drug. So you know all that safety and efficacy testing the FDA requires before a drug can even get to the market? Yeah, that doesn't happen with dietary supplements. They're held to a much lower safety standard than drugs. When do they get pulled off the shelves? When they're proven unsafe through use in public. Also, they sometimes contain prescription ingredients. Libido-enhancing dietary supplements routinely are found to contain derivatives of sildenafil, Viagra, and other similar drugs. That sounds great and all to some people, but many men seeking these unproven OTC enhancers are on nitrates for chest pain, which could prove to be a very significant drug interaction, causing a big drop in blood pressure from widespread vasodilation. Basically, dietary supplements aren't under the same scrutiny that drugs are, and most people think if it made it to the shelf, it must be safe. That's not true. Story 21. Big Pharma and Big Agro owns the FDA, and there's a hierarchy. When I worked for J&J years ago, we licensed sucralose from some foreign company to use as an artificial sweetener, brand name Splenda. Well, the FDA gave us the runaround for years on approval. They didn't even look at our studies and schedule a hearing until after the patent on NutraSweet ran out. Another artificial sweetener is called stevia and is all natural and very safe. For years, it was illegal to sell stevia and tell you how to use it. Warehouses were raided and stevia confiscated and destroyed because a company was storing stevia and a stevia cookbook in the same warehouse. The ban on stevia was only lifted when Pepsi and Coke wanted to test it as an artificial sweetener and lobbied Congress. Story 22. Airline stuff. I used to work for one of the majors. Schedules are merely suggestions, not hard and fast. More seats are sold than exist on any given flight to compensate for people who do not show up. If you lose your seat to an oversell, never take their first offer. They're on the hook for a lot more and want you to take that $150 off your next flight crap. No matter what they say, airlines will delay departures to accommodate inbound connecting flights. You gotta wait on the tarmac? Too bad, Sparky. When they tell you the delay is weather or mechanical, they're telling the truth. Never gripe about weather or mechanical delays. It's way better to be on the ground in those circumstances. The pilots are superb. I know many stories of in-flight emergencies that the passengers never even knew about. I've personally watched a plane that had an engine fire get landed like it was another day. 30 minutes later, the loser passengers were bickering because the divert location didn't have bars or restaurants open. Story 23. A lot of things on sale at grocery stores and restaurants are sold to break even, or even lose money. They make their money on the other crap you buy while you're there. For grocery stores, they bank on you needing a lot of other things when you go in for the sale of a 2-liter of Coke. So while they lose money on that, you buy toilet paper, bananas, milk, produce, frozens, etc. If they're smart, they put those on sale items in the back of the store and strategically place it where you have to walk by the high profit items. Sometimes they'll have a display of regular priced items right next to the on sale items, hoping that you grab it because it sounds good together. For on-sale Coke, they have a display of chips right next to it. Hey, the Coke is cheap. Why not some Cool Ranch Doritos to go with it for your Dancing with the Stars night you have planned later? Then, after filling your cart, checking off your list, and generally being ready to GTFO of there because you're tired from a long day at work and shopping, hopefully you walk by the hot food section and smell the chicken tenders, homemade mac and cheese, potatoes, pizza, roasted chicken, etc., and buy dinner there since you're tired from shopping and cooking seems like a pain in the ass tonight. Then, when you're standing in line to check out, hopefully you grab a 20-ounce bottle of Coke for 75% more than the 2-liter you just bought, as well as some gum, batteries, rubber bands, duct tape, a National Enquirer, and lint brush. Restaurants work the same way. Wing night at bars and grills use this to perfection. Get a dozen wings for a cheap price that the bar makes little or no money on. Then they hope you drink beer for 3 times what they pay for it, order some fries for 2 to 3 times what it costs them, and hopefully you start getting a buzz and spend a lot more than you expected. It's the same reason soft drinks are so damn expensive at most restaurants. It's an easy way to make a profit. Pull people in for something highly desirable and cheap, and make money on the extras like drinks, desserts, and sides. The milk isn't at the furthest end of the store on accident. Story 24. Firemen don't want your home-baked goods. We go into lots of disgusting homes, and we know you can't judge a book by its cover. You might be the 36 cats lady, and you brought us a pan of cat hair and poop. Thanks. If you really feel the need to thank your local FD, choose from the following list. Be very local with your support of more funding to the FD. Email your mayor, city council, and tell your neighbors that FD funding should be a priority. We're always facing budget cuts. Case in point, a few months after 9/11, Mayor Giuliani laid off firefighters to make room in the budget. If it can happen to FDNY immediately following 9/11, you can just imagine what the rest of us face. Show us your boobs. Big, small, nice, ugly, hairy, mans, none of this matters. Just show them. Grocery store gift cards because we pay for our own food, but I think we'd prefer you didn't spend your money on us. Other than we need your taxes. Stop asking the first few questions that pop in your head. A. You don't really care about our schedule. It's complicated and you'll get bored listening to the answer. B. Yes, we can sometimes sleep if we aren't on calls. Get over it. You don't want us sleep deprived when we go to your house. C. We don't know your friend or relative. Start a fire. Make it a huge one. Just kidding, dummy. Don't do that, but fires are awesome. But the one I recommend is just say thanks and leave it at that. Just kidding. Boobs is what I recommend the most. Story 25. Short answer, movie theaters are basically giant concession stands that get you to buy concessions by showing movies. Long answer, movie theaters make little to no profit off theater ticket sales. 99% of their profit is through concession sales. Popcorn and soda are probably the most marked up items in history. A 40-pound bag of seed costs like $20. A scoop of that makes like 6 large popcorns, and each one of those sells for $5 to $8 depending on your theater. You can do the math. In fact, it's kind of scary to think that this is basically what the entire film industry is resting upon, like a house of cards. All of the actors, actresses, movies, Blu-rays, DVD, spin-off, award shows, everything in the film industry is based off of those box office profits that they measure when they debut a film in theaters. And those theaters only exist because they make profits off concession sales. If people stopped buying concessions entirely, the theaters would go out of business, and bye-bye to the film industry. Numbers and estimates may vary wildly depending on location and theater. Story 26. Oddly random and probably not a secret. That firearm review in your favorite gun magazine or from your favorite firearms instructor, the reviewer/instructor probably got the gun for free from the manufacturer so he could review it. Even the crappiest guns get good reviews. That $300 POS that you love because the magazine said it was a great deal and great quality, the gun store sells them, but people who actually shoot a lot have brought it back because after a few hundred rounds it failed somehow. That gun company you love because it has a lifetime warranty, people that actually shoot a lot have had to use the warranty several times. Most people that buy guns, especially cheap guns, don't shoot much and won't ever find that their cheap, crappy gun will fail after an unacceptable number of rounds. The few that do shoot a lot are the minority. Source: I was in the industry for almost 20 years as an instructor and as a gun store manager. In a basic safety class where students fire 75 or 100 rounds, almost any gun will do. But in advanced classes where the students shoot several hundred rounds, we consistently saw the same brands of guns fail over and over, and at the gun store, we consistently saw the same brands coming back in for service over and over. Story 27. In reality, you don't have an eligible upgrade on your account, but I'm going to spend 5 minutes on the phone with corporate and approve you for a special circumstance, free upgrade, because I'm a swell effing guy, and totally not because I'm actually paid minimum wage and have to keep pace with cost of living with a horribly small commission. Do you need these 6 MBBs and 2 tablets? No. Are they going to cost you a F-ton in the long run? Yes. But in order to put some food on my table and keep my job, I have to push them on you and everyone else who walks through the door. My job is to be a terrible, swindling, underpaid crack dealer. But take my story with a grain of salt. The people I work with know damn well what they're doing to you financially in the long term. And you know what? They enjoy it. They go in the back and yuck it up day in and day out. Don't be nice to a wireless company sales rep. They're scum, and they like it. Edit. Since this is blown up a little bit with opposition, I should clarify that this is both my experience with working in a particular district and for an indirect retailer, not a corporate-owned retailer. The commission, pay, and benefit structure are entirely different than what you will experience at a corporate store. Basically, if you're getting a new phone, go to a corporate-owned front. Story 28. Pro musician here. A lot of things in the music industry can be purchased, but it costs a lot of money. Like many other things, wealthy people, or kids with wealthy parents, have an immediate advantage in this industry as long as they allocate resources to the right places. A short list of things that can be purchased. Radio play. This is called payola, and it was once very scandalous to hear about, but is now pretty much widely accepted. The way it works now, and how it goes under the radar, is that large promotion/ad firms get paid by artists to shop their music to the stations, whereas the firms and stations have a kickback system between them. Technically, nobody is directly paying the radio station, so it's unethical but legal. Spots on major tours. Quite a few major brands are now doing this in order to find opening acts. They put out an offer to a bunch of groups, say $25,000 cash for the whole tour, and a band who can afford it takes the spot. The band who paid then attempts to make their money back through merchandise sales primarily, and they may or may not be paid for their performances on the tour. The business types who oversee big tours prefer this, rather than the band finding a younger band whom they like and just bringing them along, or a band from the same label coming along because it completely waives the financial responsibility of gambling on an up-and-coming band. Social media. Everything, from Facebook likes to YouTube video comments, Twitter followers, Reverb Nation, and SoundCloud listens, it can all be purchased. People work on these sites, think subreddit beer money, and get paid a few cents per like/comment/listen, and it all works to make an artist appear like they have a big following online, which is super important today. A big tell of if an artist has done this is if they frequently gain and lose large amounts of these things, because the accounts used to generate them are real, and those people have the option to unlike your page or delete their comments, which sucks for the people who paid for it, but that's how it works. This can also be done by brands, other types of artists, anyone with an account online, really. Funny enough, many of the people doing the liking/commenting are located in India, and naturally, it might appear a bit odd if a band from North Dakota, who've never performed outside of the state, suddenly have a huge Indian fan base. So you can pay more to get more people from the USA to do the same things, which looks more legit. If your band is in India, you have a big advantage here. Being signed. This is a true story. In 2011, I was in a band who were doing really well locally, and the singer had some really good connections. We ended up being contracted by a major label with one of the best distribution networks available. They made us an offer I couldn't believe existed. For $15,000 a month, with a 4-month minimum, they would treat us like we were signed by them, give us national radio play, put our records in all the big stores, basically the full major label treatment as long as we kept paying, because we didn't have enough national exposure for them to want to sign us outright. Obviously, we couldn't afford that whatsoever, but some can. Really, if you have enough money, you can pretty much operate independently in the music industry with the same resources you'd get with a major label record deal. It's a business, like any other. If you've got a couple $1,000,000 lying around, you can get your self-produced, labelless album on shelves at Walmart just like the big boys. Story 29. There are almost no winners in sports betting. Those prices in the sports book are put together by highly educated mathematicians in such a way as to always turn a profit. Anyone who wins big has 99% of the time invested far more than their big win over their gambling history. Anyone who does win is extensively investigated for how they might have inside knowledge, and these people are stopped from betting. Anyone who's just stupidly lucky and wins a few times, even if we can't find confirmation that they've connected to the industry/event, is also barred from betting in the future. Turn a profit in betting, and the bookie doesn't want your business. See ya. Edit. All the Reddit experts below disagreeing. Thanks for your input, but I work at one of Europe's biggest sports betting companies, and the above is absolutely true. Anyone consistently beating us is simply restricted on how much they can bet, and eventually told to leave entirely. And to clarify, I was referring specifically to online betting against a bookmaker. Anyone can walk into a shop with a fake mustache and be a long-term winner. although that's still not likely. Obviously, betting against another person, peer-to-peer, can be lucrative. Thanks, Captain Obvious. Story 30. Organic dairy cows are not treated with antibiotics for infected udders. They're just continually milked. The need for organic milk comes at the expense of an overmilked cow who has to live with infected udders, whereas conventional dairy cows get antibiotics to treat the infections that arise. The standards for that precious organic tag are ridiculously low. The FDA has worked to regulate antibiotic use, and most ranchers and dairy farm owners use antibiotics judiciously to protect production. Paying $3 to $4 more for that organic tag is dumb and useless. The new directive being implemented will help to build a better relationship between ranchers and veterinarians that will consult with the ranchers over issues that may arise where antibiotic use is necessary. Look forward to a new directive from the FDA regulating antibiotic use not only in livestock, which is already heavily regulated, but also for human use. Story 31. I work for a major third-party hotel booking website. I'll spill. Secret number 1. Expedia, Hotels.com, Orbitz, Travelocity are literally the same product inventory and rates. There's no point in ever comparing them. They're all owned by Expedia and even managed by the same product team / connected to the same inventory system. Trivago is also owned by Expedia and is used primarily to promote Expedia's travel sites, which all have the same rates anyways. Secret number 2. Meta search hotel engines like Trivago, Kayak, TripAdvisor, etc. are not necessarily scouring the web for the best price. They're actually just displaying the prices of agencies that pay to be featured and bid on the hotel. Trivago is especially useless as there are major online agencies that refuse to work with them. From my experience, hunting for cheap hotel rates is part of my job. TripAdvisor is by far the best one. Story 32. The mortgage industry has no idea what it's doing. Most of the F-ups that have happened in the housing market is because of using 50-year-old software and being understaffed. Yes, there have been plenty of corrupt moves by a small amount of people, but most of it is pure incompetence. Want to know how bad these systems are? One bank advanced $1.2 million for property taxes. It was supposed to be $12K, but someone forgot a decimal. Somehow, the system that 70% of all mortgage servicers uses allows this to go through. A letter gets sent to the borrower saying their escrow payment is going to be $100K. Things like this happen all the damn time. Most of the checks in this industry are created independently by each company. I routinely see people getting double billed, overbilled, underbilled, and basically anything else you can think of because of the crap technology that this industry still uses. Story 33. If you go into a dealership with a pre-approved financing, you can negotiate a much better deal. Use a service like TrueCar.com, which is free, to find out what you should be paying for a car before you walk in the door. Also, the internet sales manager at a car dealership will always give you the lower price because he has to compete with internet pricing from other dealers. There are several free services that will allow you to request bids on cars from several dealerships via email. If you have pre-approved financing and a walk into the dealership with the offer from the internet sales manager, you can be in and out with your new car in about an hour. Also, keep in mind that a lot of dealerships now don't pay salesmen commission anymore, or they only get paid commission after they sell X number of cars in a month. The dealership also gets more money per vehicle from the manufacturer when they hit the X number of cars sold per month. This means that they're willing to lose money on some sales in order to make it up in volume. MSRP doesn't matter, only dealer cost after incentives. Also, go in towards the end of the month when they're trying to make their sales numbers, and they'll be more willing to give you a great deal. Story 34. The film industry knows perfectly well when they're producing a piece of crap. They do not care how it will be perceived, but have done enough math and focus groups to know precisely how to turn a profit off every Kevin Hart flick through marketing. It may get the worst reviews imaginable and be considered a flop, but they rarely lose money. They choose when to produce good films and can do so pretty much on command for the purpose of getting it into the Oscar race, which promotes their stars in the studio, whether they win or not. There's a formula to that. They groom certain stars based on their appeal to certain demographics to be their go-to for films like these. See Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence. There's a lot more, but the film industry is basically a stock market, one very easy to manipulate. The sole purpose is to invest a certain amount of money, and as long as you make $1 more in return, you win. Story 35. I'm a professional tattooist. Many of my peers tell customers how expensive the supplies are, saying that just a basic setup to do one tattoo costs like $30 to $50. It costs more like about $3, including everything I can factor into it, including rent and bills. Needles cost less than 50 cents usually. A big bottle of black ink lasts me 6 months or so and costs $20. We don't charge so much because the supplies are expensive, and I wish my peers would stop saying that. It's a cop-out. We charge so much because it's a difficult skill to learn, and we deserve to be compensated as tradesmen. Also, the hourly rate for tattooing has hovered around $100 an hour for 27 years, since 1989. Tell me one other thing that costs the same as it did in 1989. And in 1989, the needles were far more expensive because the Chinese factories hadn't started making them yet. They cost over $1 each in 1989. We tattooers make less money than ever, but it isn't because of the cost of supplies. So just for fun, just for giggles, OP here challenged us to name a product that costs the same now as it did in 1989, and I'm going to go ahead and say a hot dog at Costco. $1.50 back then, still $1.50 to this day. It is a timeless classic and so good, I'm probably going to eat one some point in the next week or so. Moving on. Story 36. New Coke was preferred in blind taste testing over Classic Coke, Pepsi, and RC Cola by all cola drinkers. Extensive testing was done before the introduction of New Coke. After that unprecedented consumer backlash, it was tested again with the same results. People just weren't buying it. New Coke was introduced when the product was on its 99th anniversary. There was to be a big rollout of the Classic Coke on the 100th anniversary. A product introduction like the world of marketing had never experienced before. Coca-Cola Co. was and still is one of the leading marketing innovators of all time in the Western world. It was all scrapped because of customer protests of the old Coke being removed entirely from the market. There was hoarding, price gouging, and threats of a class action lawsuit. No joke here. Such a lawsuit would have cost millions just to entertain. This all coming from loyal customers who did not appreciate Coca-Cola Co. deciding for them that they would change their product and force it on them. All the while, research still showed that they preferred the new Coke when they did not know what the choices were given to them during the 100-year-old pride. Sidebar, New Coke was sold in post-mix form and soda fountains extensively during this entire debacle, with hardly anyone noticing the change. The flavor change was very slight, actually, and the mere presence of ice would neutralize any perception of it. Coca-Cola Co. sold millions of gallons of New Coke this way with no complaints at all. In those days, there were no self-serve soda stations that are so common today. Story 37. Remember the Pepsi challenge? Consumers were asked to pick the cola they preferred from a blind test including Coca-Cola and Pepsi Cola. We performed hundreds of these demonstrations at our location near Philadelphia and got almost the same results as the national average. 76% of those tested preferred the Pepsi. The biggest problem we experienced was trying to get people to just tell us which product they liked better. Everyone was interested in showing us how they could properly identify the two brands. We kept insisting that we just wanted to know which they preferred. Since most people picked Pepsi over Coke, you would think that having just proven to themselves that they like Pepsi better, they would now buy it instead. Almost nobody changed their purchase habits. Excuses were given like, it kept them up all night or it was too gassy, etc. They had just proved to themselves that they preferred Pepsi, but they were so sold on Coke for so long that they couldn't bring themselves to change brands. If anyone ever tells you that they're not affected by ads or commercials, see if they have any brand preferences between products that are practically indistinguishable. I'll bet they do distinguish between Shell and BP, or Burger King and Wendy's. The differences are slight to non-existent. Nobody is immune to it. What's in your refrigerator? Story 38. Your average call center worker is treated like a third world slave. Often will be expected to work an 8 to 12-hour shift from beginning to end with the phone cord shoved up their ass, and the level of micromanagement is pedantic. Scheduled breaks and adherence reports if you're a few seconds over or late. Having to go to an aux code to take a piss, even that's often rigorously monitored. Hell, I've heard some places only allow 6 minutes per month. Never-ending, impossible to achieve metrics and targets with daily, sometimes hourly reports, where you're constantly having to justify yourself. Calls are usually back-to-back and relentlessly soul-destroying. On top of all this, you then have the delight of dealing with a-hole customers who seem to be under some sort of delusion that you're their female dog and to be abused in their relentless pilgrimage to get whatever their usually stupid or mundane issue is resolved. People seriously underestimate call center workers. Dealing with all this crap day in and day out takes an incredible amount of skill and willpower. Depression is rife in call centers due to the conditions. Imagine dealing with this crap for a long-ass 12-hour shift, and then at 11 hours and 59 minutes, while you're hovering over the logout button, praying to the call center gods that you can go home, another call comes through, and you're then left dealing with yet another stupid-ass customer for half an hour, having to pander to their crap and be friendly, all the while in your mind, you're contemplating using your phone wire as a noose just to get out of this call. Next time you call a call center, don't be a dick to the person you're speaking to. They're dealing with an immense level of crap that you have no clue about. Be nice, friendly, and cooperative. That agent will go out of their way to give you whatever you want. The second you start moaning or being abusive, we give no Fs about you or whatever it is you want. All we want is to get your annoying voice out of our ear and move into the next caller. P.S. To the people who complain about hold times, you're the worst. Agents hate hold times as much as you do. Why? Because for us, it means back-to-back calls. Management micromanaging more than usual and rushing us to clear the queue, and on top of that, you whinging about how long you've been on hold. We know you're waiting, and we're going as fast as we can to get to you, but it's not our fault you're waiting so long. We're not sitting around scratching our balls. We're just busy dealing with the other 30 callers ahead of you, most of whom are complete idiots and calling about nothing. Also, look up the opening hours before you call. If the call center closes at 8 p.m., those poor agents are expected to take calls right up until 8 p.m. and after. There's nothing worse than having 30 people in the queue 10 minutes before closing, because we have to stay behind to deal with you. People often complain about bad customer service from call centers, but most of the time they have no idea what it's like to actually work in one. I'm sorry, but if you're that idiot who enters the queue 10 minutes before closing, you're going to get rushed off the phone. That unfortunate agent who's done a long as F shift wants to go home and not be stuck dealing with your crap until 8:30, missing their bus home, etc., whilst the security guard stands over the agent tapping his foot as he also wants to go home. I'm not even going to get started on quality checks. Take all the above into consideration and then imagine having 2 or 3 of your calls selected at random by some plebe of a quality agent who hasn't even spoke to a customer themselves for years, and then being pulled up on some minor crap because you forgot to say something or should have said something else. For the inevitable "get another job then" comments, it's really not that easy. There's no magic effing job tree. We try to do our best, but it's hard, especially once you've been lured into the call center world. It's hard to get out. So next time, just spare a thought for the person on the other end of the phone. Story 39. Hospitals F up a lot and some weird crap goes on in its bowels. A few examples come to mind. 1. A surgeon outright killed a patient. Not a case where the patient was near death and an accident happened. No. A patient needed to be intubated and the ambulance staff, for some reason, felt uncomfortable doing it, so it fell to the surgeon. He reached across the patient, scalpel in hand, and nicked the patient's artery. Even in the hospital, nothing could be done to save her. To add to it all, the patient's brother forced his way into either the morgue or the operating room, can't remember which, and took a few dozen pictures of the corpse, the blood, and the staff. 1. Misplaced bodies. We had a child's deceased body sent from the hospital to a funeral home 2 hours away, only to realize it was the wrong child. The child had died while the parents were on vacation, and they were actively driving to the funeral home at the time. The hospital pulled some 80s movie-level shenanigans to delay the parents long enough to switch the bodies back. Not sure if the parents ever found out about it, but the hospital cracked down on properly labeling bodies afterwards. 2. There's some weird crap in the basements. There are ladders to nowhere, dark corners that appear to have not been touched in decades, and a load of crawlspace-sized rooms and passages. Shortly before I left, a coworker found a room where water was spread on the floor throughout, and a metal chair and car battery were sitting in the middle of it all. TLDR, doctors murder patients. Your child's deceased body may not be yours, and the basements are from horror movies. Story 40. Veterinarian here. The grain-free pet food movement is not based on any science whatsoever. All vet dermatologists around the world will tell you most food allergies are not grain-based, but due to common meat proteins. Chicken and beef primarily. This is why our first trial treatment is a novel protein diet, containing meat from duck, venison, kangaroo, etc. The idea that grain-free is healthier has no studies to back that up. It's all a marketing campaign. That's why we, the vet community, still hold Hill's Pet Food, a Royal Canin, and Purina in high regards compared to companies like Blue Buffalo and the million others popping up. These 3 former companies do real research to try and determine how to manage medical diseases like kidney disease, obesity, joint problems, hormonal diseases, GI disease, etc. These companies also control most or all of the processing steps to ensure quality control, something Blue Buffalo is absolutely horrible with. I really detest Blue Buffalo. They've had 3 big recalls in the past decade and spend so much money on marketing and advertising. They use vendors that are of low quality and often mix byproducts they claim to be free of. In the early 1990s, BB wanted to get the veterinary community's endorsement. So vets said, okay, great, let's work on some research and evidence-based diets. BB said, nah, can't you just put your name on it anyway? Slimy bastards. Edit. 1. Your anecdotal statements on how your animal is allergic to grains is erroneous to what the research shows. Like I said, if your animal is allergic to grains, then they're the minority. 2. For cats and grains, I'm more on board with limited or grain-free, because they're primary carnivores, and it would make intuitive sense to feed them meat based on their anatomy and physiology. However, no research has shown it to improve life quality or quantity, or to be more healthy in any way whatsoever in a significant way. We can make assumptions based on what makes intuitive sense, but it's wrong to make bold statements of fact when there's nothing backing it. Many things in science and medicine are surprisingly counterintuitive, and to make such bold statements is arrogant and unhelpful. So I got lost pretty early on in this post when this OP shared with us that apparently kangaroo meat is part of pet feed. I'm assuming that this is only in Australia, but I had no idea that people ate kangaroo, well, not people, but that kangaroo meat was used for consumption of any kind. That's kind of weird, but again, I live in the US, so yeah, just a thought. Story 41. We love when parents care about their child's health. We also have no problem with specialized diets, just as long as the parent is willing to help us out a little. If you're determined to have an entirely organic, vegan, gluten-free child, then go right ahead. The only time that becomes a problem is when the parent doesn't pack a lunch, but expects us to conform to whatever new diet fad they found on Pinterest. There are plenty of parents of social organic snowflake children who are perfectly reasonable about it. Others are not. If you know that we're having a birthday party and that there will be many cupcakes, try to pack your child's favorite parent-approved treat so that they don't feel left out. While we encourage having a healthy diet for your child, we have special occasions when the kids get treated to ice cream or a mini cupcake. It's really heartbreaking to have to explain to these children that their parents won't allow them to have anything. They usually cry and they think they're being punished for something. I understand wanting the best for your child, but as a glorified babysitter, it's not my job to make sure that your child only plays with their own toys that nobody else is allowed to touch and learns Russian while the other kids are learning how to spell their name. If that's what you require, get a nanny. Also, I'm not advocating giving small children Coke. It's bad for them. That's why it was a dirty little secret. The fact that the child was a special organic snowflake only made the secret worse, because we know the mom would have flipped her crap if she found out. Story 42. After being bought out by an investment company, BC Partners, PetSmart recently purchased hundreds of small, independent pet-related businesses, but is working hard to prevent people from knowing that. They bought huge websites like PetMD, several treat and food companies, and a bunch of all-natural, holistic, crunchy granola pet stores. No announcements or changes or information to consumers went out. Some of the companies still have claims that they're locally owned and against stores like PetSmart. The websites claim to have independent pet experts and vets, but it's all Banfield Vets, which is a partner of PetSmart. They also stock stores with a bunch of different brand names like Top Paw and Simply Nourish that they actually own and are specifically designed for people to pay at different price points for comparable products. It's not exactly the end of the world, but overnight, PetSmart went from having majority market share to having a huge silent empire, billionaire backers, and a knack for brand/consumer manipulation. I'm interested to see how this ends up. Story 43. Mattress stores are good at this. Price match guarantee, and we'll give you $100 if you can find the same mattress for less. Well, look till your heart's content, because you will not find the same mattress for less. In fact, you'll not find the same mattress at all. The mattress company makes a very limited number of models. But what they do is they will allow you to put your own name and stitching pattern on the mattress. So while you're in store A and see the Dream Deluxe from Cloud Mattress Brands, you go to another store and see a Cloud Mattress brand that looks and feels identical to what was at store A. But this is the Dreamscape Extra model, and it has a different stitching on the pillow top. Are they different? No, just the name and stitching. The find a lower price is to get you in the store to buy there as you wind up going back to the original store to double check things and then say screw it and just buy there. A variation of this was pulled by Circuit City where they would get a bundle from a supplier and make the offer, but the supplier only sold that exact bundle to Circuit City. A video camera, tripod, bag, and cleaning kit, which includes a deluxe 8-ounce cleaning fluid, $899.99. Go somewhere else and they have the same camera, tripod, and bag, and a cleaning kit for $885. You run back to Circuit City and show them, and then show you that their box item number is different and that theirs contain the 8-ounce cleaning fluid while the other doesn't. You argue but then give in and buy from Circuit City, because why travel all the way to the other store for such a low savings? So they got you in by offering you a price match plus 10%, but good luck claiming it since they have retailers make them up a box special that's exclusive to them with a different model number. So they get you in the door first, and then you come back to them thinking you got them for 10%, and then don't have the energy to go back and buy from the other place. So this philosophy kind of applies to all walks of the business world. You can absolutely make a killing taking advantage of people's laziness and making things more convenient for them, and this is one such tactic, so thank you for sharing. Story 44. Former bank employee here. Tellers and bankers frequently pore through customers' accounts and purchase history on debit/credit cards out of idle curiosity, usually out of boredom, or other times to get to know a customer better. Any bank employee with any one of your account numbers has access to all your financial information within that institution. Your debit card number gives me access to every account you have: mortgages, credit cards, checking and savings accounts, investment accounts, etc., and all of the history therein. I could tell how many times you went to McDonald's this month. Even looked up an old acquaintance's account once with only their name just because I was going crazy with boredom. We see all. Edit 1. To all of you, it's not illegal or against the policies of financial institutions, as we're allowed to look at any and all information as it pertains to serving you as a customer. It is, however, against policy to do it when you aren't currently being served, or if it is not for the sake of researching you for future business. For example, I was encouraged many times to pore through account history of individuals to clean things such as possible net worth, estimated income, etc., as this information is important to banks placing extra resources on placing a special emphasis on these individuals with the end goal of pushing in-house investing. The only time I was personally out of line was looking up that person I knew from the past. That was against policy, but there are really few safeguards, none that I knew of, to protect against this. It was a one-time breach in my integrity. I know many other times that I resisted out of respect toward an individual. Edit 2. When a bank employee puts any account information into their computer, say for your deposit into a checking account, they immediately see the current balances/values of all accounts that you hold at that institution, including credit cards, HELOCs, mortgages, savings, checking, etc. Now it's just one click away from unlimited access to the history of all activities: deposit, withdrawal, debits, credits, purchases, etc. We basically see your net worth with our institution by default. Story 45. Everyone's gas comes from the same big tanks at distribution centers. The gas you buy at Shell might have come from a Phillips refinery, or Conoco or Valero, or whatever supplier had the cheapest gas at the closest terminal that day. Doesn't matter, it's all the same gas. There's no such thing as mid-grade gasoline. Mid-grade gasoline is made by loading 50% regular with 50% premium and hoping it sloshes around enough in the truck to get mixed up on the way to the gas station. Gasoline can contain up to 10% ethanol, and they don't even have to tell you. Sometimes premium gas isn't even premium. It's regular gas plus 10% ethanol plus an octane booster additive, depending on whatever was the cheapest way to make premium that day. Ethanol is a huge octane booster and gets used to turn regular into mid-grade or premium all the time. Suppliers don't have to tell you when they do this either. Story 46. Customer service will laugh at you after your call or between holds if you act ridiculously upset or ask for a ridiculous discount out of nowhere. If every time you call customer service you vociferate to the person on the other side, not only do you paint yourself as a douche, but eventually your complaints, legitimate or not, fall in priority because A, nobody wants to take your call, B, everyone wants to be done with you, and C, at some point you'll be considered to be fishing for discounts. How to get good/great customer service? A. Don't bargain. Ask if there's any promos, but don't try to bend someone's arm to force a discount. If you want to hire a professional company, then be ready to pay the money for it. B. If you don't like a company policy, ask why rather than complain about it. Also, accept the fact that a business is trying to protect itself while trying to keep you as a client. C. Agents are more willing to help you if you explain calmly and use words like frustrated or disappointed and give your legitimate reasons rather than shout and grind teeth. D. Don't assume you know how the system works. Where I work, we schedule photographers and people think we have full-time photogs sitting around waiting to take same-day appointments. Those are rare. E. Don't over-explain or over-complain. The time we spend saying, yes, is time we could be spending fixing your problem. F. If you have a suggestion, it's always appreciated, and a good agent will contact the right parties to implement them, even if it does take months. E. Get tech-savvy. CS staff is not tech support. G. If someone tells you to email a specific address then call, do just that. It means it will take longer for the CS person to explain to the specific person all the crap you want to say, and they'll probably mess up at it, or that they have to go through channels before your stuff gets done. So if you email, even if they don't respond right away, it gets done faster. F. Call the right department/extension. If someone transfers you, it's for a reason. Don't play coy thinking because you call the design department, they'll place your order and schedule for you as well as the sales department. That's all I can think of for now, but I'll add more if I remember. P.S. I'm a graphic designer, but I sometimes have to take calls that are meant for other departments. I'm a good person and will help you out as best I can. It also so happens I know most of the ins and outs of it, so I can help. But there are others in my department who can't and won't help. So not only will you have wasted their time, you will have wasted your time because instead of waiting in queue, you spoke to the wrong person. Story 47. A lot of times if you're buying fish from most grocery stores, not all, definitely the vast majority of budget ones, or a non-seafood specific restaurant near the source, there's a good chance you're not getting exactly what you think you're getting. Wild Atlantic salmon stocks are absurdly low, and most places selling wild Atlantic salmon are really giving you farm-raised. I don't have issues with FR seafood across the board, but I do feel like the customer shouldn't be lied to. Same with orange roughy to an extent. If you're getting fresh orange roughy, it was almost certainly frozen at some point in the supply chain. Also, quit eating orange roughy. It isn't really that good or that cheap. In fact, a lot of lower-priced grocery stores will label anything not sold in a frozen state as fresh, even if it's spent the last 2 months in a freezer. If you're buying shrimp from virtually anywhere in Asia, chances are there's a significant amount of human slavery in the supply chain. This isn't true for every brand, but it is for a ton of brands sold in major stores including Costco, Tesco, Whole Foods, Kroger, and Walmart. If the price is too good to be true, it is. I've seen tilapia and ocean perch sold as red snapper. Prepared/breaded seafood that is cheap and says product of USA was breaded in the USA. The fish is likely from outside the USA. If you're getting any sort of shellfish, sans shrimp, especially in a salad or dip, for cheap, it's actually pollock. But I don't usually give a crap because it's still tasty. Story 48. The Data Protection Act in the UK, maybe named differently in other EU nations, gives you the right to see pretty much any information any organization holds on you. This could be anything from full customer records, CCTV, internal memos, and even employment records and HR notes. Any organization that stores information about you must give you a copy on request. If you've ever phoned a call center and heard, "This call may be recorded," if it was recorded, then they legally have to give you a copy. If you suspect your employer or the HR department is keeping tabs on you, recording you or writing about you, then you have a right to see it. This law even covers the government and military. Comedian Mark Thomas famously used it to get hold of memos about him that a military base had been writing. He had been protesting outside the base, and they didn't like him causing problems. Another famous use was a movie created entirely out of CCTV tapes that were requested through the Data Protection Act. Obviously, there are exceptions, but the police don't have to give you information that would jeopardize an investigation, and that also goes for various other criminal-related data. Story 49. When an insured, read you, calls in after some damage happens to your XXXXX and asks, "Is XXXXX covered in my policy?" We're explicitly told to not give you an answer and to take it to claims to file one. At best, we can give it an "it depends." The thing is, we pretty much know at the time of the call if you're gonna get a check or be up crap creek. I'm sure for you that's stupid and frustrating, but allow me to explain. If I tell you on a recorded line, "Why yes, sir/madam, this is totally covered on your policy. Would you like me to transfer you to the claims department?" That's giving you a 100% guarantee on us paying your loss, whether or not the way your loss occurred is actually covered. Because it's on a recorded line that I said it. That then makes it true, whether it's true or not. Conversely, if I say on a recorded line, "I'm sorry, but that won't be covered on your policy," and it turns out that actually yes, it is covered, that's me and the company up crap creek. In other words, the best way for you to know 100% guaranteed on whether damages are payable by your insurance company or not, file a claim. The adjuster is licensed to be able to tell you what your policy does or does not cover, and can even write out the check for you. And if it's not, well, Story 50, jewelry. Most companies mark up their prices everywhere from 200% to 600%, but most of you all probably knew that. Most diamond rings that I've seen come in only cost the company about $500 to $5,000 to buy, but mark them up for $2,000 to $30,000 plus, depending on the carat, clarity, cut, and color, of course. It's actually really crazy how much they mark it up. I didn't think much about it until I started reading the logs for our new merchandise. Example, a ring that costs the company $5,000, and they give it a markup of 500%, making it $30,000 for ticket price. Even with a sale, especially the better ones, the ring would probably sell around $15,000 to $20,000 depending on the sale. The diamond and gold weight are the biggest factor, with the second being labor. From jewelry brands like Tiffany and Cartier, you're obviously paying more for the name than anything else. Also, you can get a lot of similar styles to those name brands custom made at other jewelers for much cheaper, and most people wouldn't even know the difference. Want a traditional Tiffany setting for your wedding ring? Get it custom made somewhere else for less than Tiffany would charge. All you'd be missing is the Tiffany blue box. I use Tiffany because it's one of the settings that I get asked for a lot, and I get asked for comparisons to other companies too. TLDR, jewelry is marked up a lot more than most people think it is. Story 51. When a car rental agency offers you a deal to buy a tank of gas at less than pump price, that price on the board is usually just the pump price less sales tax. That tax, of course, gets tacked right back on when you pay at the end of your rental. Head office didn't tell frontline staff this, of course, just emailed out the price to put on the board every morning. However, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. It was always 13% below pump price, which is identical to the sales tax we have here in Ontario. The company's logic was that nobody was ever going to use the entire tank down to the last drop. Fortunately, very few customers actually look at that deal, so I doubt they made much money off it. Story 52. I'd say the sheer quantity of data that marketers have on people. For example, if you visit the website of an e-commerce shop, you get tagged with a visitor ID via your IP, where it creates a profile for you based off the pages you viewed, links you checked, how long you looked at something, etc. If you give your email to that site, the profile becomes more complete. Software searches all social networks for your any accounts that use your email, pulling information about you and even your profile picture. Then it tracks what device you're on, the resolution of that device's screen, what browser and browser version you're using, and what email client you use to check your email. So sites can send you emails tailored around shirts you like based on your behavior on their site, or even your social media activity. These emails are optimized for your device/browser/email client. If you're on an older iPhone versus a new one, you get a slightly different email. And finally, after all that, you can even be used as an example or case study, i.e. your picture, name, device info, pages viewed, etc., thrown up on a screen while a bunch of marketers analyze behavior to come up with new tactics to engage you. Fun stuff. Story 53. A depressing number of U.S. states do not have proper systems in place to identify small businesses who are delinquent on their state income taxes or to track the delinquencies, meaning you can get away with sending in a payment that is far less than what you owe, and the chances of ever getting caught are minuscule, especially if you're a contractor for said state and know some people. Have environmental agencies that are so poorly funded and have such overwhelming investigation backlogs that large companies can often negotiate away violations before they become public record. record, and often keep them out of state reporting systems entirely. Pay contractors and consultants to identify friendly ways of winding down state services in areas where the tax base is not self-supporting in order to influence re-election/reappointment outcomes. Outsource to writing the RFI/RFPs, request for information/request for proposal, to the very same people who will later submit responses for those requests and be awarded the contracts. Fund projects that they know will fail to lack of expertise and management capabilities within the state agency or department providing the funding, meaning the contractor and the state both know that little to no work will be performed, yet the contractor will still get paid. This is usually done with small projects that fall below the threshold for legislative review/approval, so that there's no bid process and limited, if any, public disclosure. Have property tax systems that are gamed by real estate holdings companies in order to snap up delinquent properties for pennies on the dollar. Many of these are then transferred to a management company and turned into rental units. Are required to hire local contractors almost without regard to cost. Want to become a local contractor? Open a branch office within a required area just before you submit your outrageously costed proposal. I could go on, but because I cannot name names or provide specifics in order to protect myself, it wouldn't be worth the time. Edit. Actually, one more. My favorite. Many open positions within the state receive so few applicants that you can often snag a job without meeting any of the qualifications. Volunteer to take over criminal tasks so that people rely on you, then quit and take a job in the private sector, or pretend to, but keep in touch with your former coworkers. When the job is about to get reposted, use them as a back channel and offer to come back to help them out for a bump in compensation. Aim for 85 to 90% of the max for the position. It's often much easier to rehire you than to repost the job. Wash, rinse, repeat, and max out your compensation without ever being qualified or going through a performance review. Story 54. Poor kids don't get second chances, at least not in my area. There's a local program called Diversion, which is pretty prevalent around the country, but might have different names in different places. Basically, if you're a first-time offender with a crime that isn't too serious, you'll be placed on diversion instead of being formally charged with the crime. If you fail the diversion program, your file gets forwarded to the prosecuting attorney, and they will charge you, and you'll get sent to court and have a public record. This doesn't sound too crazy until you find out that diversion fees are a standard term of diversion and make up a large percentage of the county budget. And furthermore, that while diversion fees can be waived if a family can afford them, they almost never are. So poor kids who can't afford the $100 diversion fee get a public criminal record, while rich kids do not. On the plus side, normally when a case gets in front of a judge simply because they didn't pay the fee, the judge will only charge a $20 petition fee and dismiss the case. But that criminal record is public and it stays even if it says dismissed by the court. Story 55. I was on a reality show and the whole thing was scripted. I know you're all thinking, tell me something I don't know, but hear this. I was on one of those buy and sell shows. You know, the ones that look for killer, once-in-a-lifetime deals. Well, the deal involved a wicked stroller. I know it sounds stupid that I'd be excited about a stroller, but my wife was about to have our first kid. So we do this deal on TV for a stroller, and after the filming, I asked the guys, hey, can we just have the stroller instead of getting paid? They were close to the same value, although the stroller was worth more. They said no, they had to return it to Walmart. Literally all the props were returned to where they bought them. Gah! Not only that, but the whole thing was scripted. Even the random feeling of having to hit the bathroom that didn't make it to the final cut. Fake. Needless to say, I can't stand any reality show these days. Story 56. If you're a singer and/or musician on stage and bothering the sound engineer with incessant requests to turn your voice/instrument up on your floor wedge monitor, or simply want the entire monitor to be louder, the engineer will eventually stop bumping up the level and will instead feign turning up at the mixer until you give the thumbs up because you think it's louder. This is no longer an issue with personal in-ear monitors with Performer customizable mixes, but when the monitors are shared floor wedges, you gotta stop the madness. All that noise coming from the floor wedges bounces off the back walls and back into the house. Also, if you're a backup vocalist in a live venue having pitch problems, the sound engineer will bring your level down to decrease the obviousness of it. Your job is to make a good mix for the audience/congregation. So if you're having an off day, your contribution might not be as apparent in the house mix, even if you hear yourself in the monitor. So I myself am a musician. I play bass guitar, electric guitar, and do vocals. And the way that I get around this is when we do sound checks, I actually turn my instrument down to about between a quarter power and half as far as the volume goes. And then if I personally want to bump it up, if the sound engineer is not being cooperative, you can always turn yourself up on your actual instrument. Give yourself a little bit of leeway. I know that doesn't affect a lot of people listening to this, but I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what was posted here. So yeah, there are loopholes around that. Story 57. Acne medication makes better, and then the acne gets worse. Copyrighted movies are only illegal to download or upload if the entire movie, including the credits, wink wink, is redistributed without consent. Everything is made to break, especially electronics. If everyone was able to use the same cell phone for a decade or more, then the manufacturers would lose a lot of business. P.S. People could make a buttload of money if they built custom phones that had a hardware switch for on/off, networking circuitry only in order to prevent unwanted spying and software from being sneakily installed and executed. Were durable, upgradable hardware, unlockable, and easily configurable. Hackable/custom OS. 3D printer generation unite. Police cannot easily jail a person that knows their rights and how to politely assert their freedoms. P.S. Interrogation rooms are there to get a confession or to get a lead straight from the horse's mouth. It's for self-incrimination. Saying anything at all can be used against you. Asking for a lawyer can be taken as guilt. They cannot hold you without consent of proof, which is usually only acquired from violent crimes or if you're busted in the act of doing something stupid, like stealing. Ignorance is exploited for consent. It's not illegal to ship gun parts to outlawed areas of the USA. As long as the firearm is not assembled, it can be shipped legally. Quantum computer parts are only random magnetic fluctuations at super cold temperatures. The correct sequence of electrical signals is only possible after enough time has passed. Boltzmann brain hypothesis as a reference. Investors are being ripped off. They would be better off investing in a random bit generator, which also would be inefficient as well as inaccurate almost 100% of the time. Story 58. Used to work at Domino's. About 4 years total over late high school and college. Cost to make large pepperoni pizza? About $1.25. And if I recall correctly, the exact pepperoni count was 46, which also goes down if you added more toppings. Whether the pizza tracker is actually accurate depends on the store/manager you order from. They're graded by corporate on those numbers, so not only would my manager deliberately skimp on your toppings, but the second your relatively simple order of whatever popped up on the screen, he'd clear it all to say it's cooking before it actually was. Then he'd shove it a foot into the oven to give it a head start, he'd say. The only place hair can manage to make it onto your pizza is at the quality inspection stage, ironically enough. It doesn't make it through the oven, but rather falls in when it's being cut and boxed. We'd also know if you planted the hair, especially when you say it was a long blonde hair, and we have a bunch of short-haired dudes working the store. If you want free pizza, it's usually the complaint that does the trick, not the proof. Having worked all aspects of those stores aside from a manager myself, please tip your drivers. That delivery fee doesn't go to your drivers. They get a set rate based on how many orders they take, with diminishing returns to dissuade you from taking too many at once, which they're regularly forced to exceed if understaffed or busy. $1.25 for the first order, 50 cents for the second, none or all orders after that. My figures are accurate as of 2008 to 2009. I finished college and made it to my dream job and would welcome any updated figures. Story 59. Winn-Dixie has a list of nasty things we do that we don't want you knowing. Our chemicals used to clean the bathrooms are mostly water. We don't recycle what you throw in the recycle bins. Most of it gets thrown into the trash, and the plastic bags are salvaged. We jack up prices on BOGO sales to make you pay around 120% of its original shelf value. Produce will reuse molded and wilting products by cutting off the mold parts and dunking them in water, freezing them for 5 minutes to look fresher. Our carts are never washed. You're better off carrying your products in a trash can to the checkout. Staff are underpaid, and some never get a raise until they actually ask. I was one of them and had to bring up the issue to the district CEO over the course of 2 years. Thank God I'm moving to Publix soon. Story 60. Tinfoil time. The reason terrorists for violence-inducing Facebook and Twitter pages/people, ISIS, BLM, white pride nonsense, people who genuinely like Brussels sprouts, typical thug gangs, etc., are allowed to exist or because it makes it much easier for Big Brother to watch what they're doing, perform trend analysis, and intervene. Google, Facebook, Twitter are such liberal, SJW, beta PC safe spaces because it allows for dummies, see above, to roam freely and post without penalty. Create a Facebook page/Twitter tag discussing Hillary's obvious health problems, and it'll get deleted for a few reasons. They're in her pocket. But then you still see violent pages/groups, etc. existing discussing violence towards white people or harming cops existing. The Hillary truth-telling groups expressing concern about her illegal affairs and health issues are not populated by people who are likely to riot anywhere over anything insignificant, or cause mayhem and/or incite violence. Delete them because they hurt your narrative and they aren't worth monitoring. Then you look and say, why is that other group allowed to exist then? They're violent and problematic. The answer? They're being watched by three-letter agencies. TLDR. Hate groups are allowed to exist on social media because it makes them and their actions easier to follow by the authorities. I have actually done work in this effort. This last part here isn't tinfoil. Story 61. Production keyboard and pianist here. Many productions and even live bands are not 100% live. Many productions, cruise ships, megachurches, television, etc., and large entertainment bands use backing tracks. The most common stuff on the backing tracks is extra keyboards, extra horns, extra backup vocals, and extra percussion. It can also be so bad that sometimes musicians don't even have to really play their part, and sometimes are asked to not even plug into the system and just fake play along. In order to stay synced with the track, the drummer and other band members have to listen to a track in their headphones with a metronome click. The reason for this is that the organization can have more control over exactly how long a show will last and be able to synchronize lighting and staging effects perfectly. The downside is you get the most uninspired musical show possible. It's amazing how many people in the audiences straight up do not realize this. They come up afterwards and compliment you for how full you sounded, despite being such a tight little group. This is why I don't do this kind of work anymore. I don't get into music to deceive people. So just to push back on this a little bit, it's not necessarily deception. It's entertainment. So if you have a vocalist that's off key, or if your bass player or your rhythm guitar player just isn't playing very well, it's not at all uncommon to mute them, turn up the backing track so that the audience remains engaged instead of focusing on the one person or two people on stage that are absolutely trashing the performance. So at the end of the day, you're on stage to inspire and entertain, and in order to bring out the best of that experience, that's why you've got the audio engineers and whatnot. So I don't necessarily feel that that's deceptive. Story 62. Every, and I mean every online booking agent does not have the best price for any hotel. Booking.com charges the hotel 15 to 18% or more. I know Expedia charges close to 25% off of total dollar booked. This is true for bed and breakfasts and Airbnb, but not as bad. It's a huge commission, and for most places, that's their entire profit, if not more. Call the place and book directly. You'll always get a better price. If not, book with the hotel directly. Most times, even franchises are owned by small families who work 7 days a week. Help them out and help the local economy you're visiting. They use outright lies and underhanded tactics to make sure they're just as expensive, if not less, than hotels by forcing them in a position they don't want to be. Better to make a couple dollars than no dollars is literally what's happening here. Story 63. Almost every scenario in those fancy video police training simulators ends with whoever you're confronting pulling out a gun and shooting at you. Ostensibly, they're supposed to train officers on when to fire, but eventually it just turns into a shooting gallery. Doesn't matter the scenario. Traffic stops, bar brawls, school fights, etc. All of the acting is really bad, too. You don't get a sense of, say, how someone who's nervous because you've got a gun pointed at them and acts different when someone who's nervous because they're about to point a gun at you. After going through those things umpteen times, I'm not surprised at the state of policing in this country. Even if police don't take them seriously, the fact that this is the kind of thing that departments want is telling. Story 64. More for businesses, but if you have a support/maintenance contract with a big-name company, always ask yourself what it would cost them and cost you if they just blew you off and didn't honor the contract. Because I can guarantee you they have finance and legal people whose jobs it is to calculate precisely what they would lose by doing so. And often, it's nothing. Or they'll have contracts which say they'll have a rep on site within 4 hours. Sure, they'll send an intern whose entire job there is to look at the issue, pretend they have the slightest idea what it is, then say they have to call in more resources to address it, and leave. But they technically had a rep on site in the 4-hour window, so they technically fulfilled the contract, and you have no leg to stand on. Always, always, always make sure you have a backup you can call in, and make sure you have sufficient insurance for when you get blown off by a big name company. Or if they send an idiot, or they simply don't fix what they say they will. It's good practice anyway, because of situations where the contractor actually does not need that one part that's only made on the other side of the world, or their local warehouse caught fire last week. And I'd add, try to have penalty clauses in your contracts. It makes blowing you off just that bit more expensive than blowing off the next guy on the list when you both need the same contractor at the same time. Story 65. Geek Squad agents are typically pretty good with computers, but are limited what they can/are allowed to do. When you buy a contract for tech support, yes, you get that agent's mostly undivided attention, but any spy/virus/mal/adware removal is handled by someone in India. Computers are connected to a system called AJU, Agent Johnny Utah, that remotely work on the machine overnight, which is how they can have decent 2 to 3 day turn time. If someone is good with a certain brand, they'll offer to do the repair in-house and charge the labor rate. So if I'm good at Dell's and you bring in a screen or a hard drive or RAM or something small, I'll do the repair behind the curtain and charge the $60 an hour labor rate. The data backup service is absolute bullcrap, obviously. There's a machine that takes 5 HDDs and lets you run multiple backups simultaneously. Don't waste your money. Story 66. Most U.S. universities rely to a great degree on graduate students and very underpaid adjuncts. The question that university admission offices hate the most is, what percentage of classes are actually taught by tenure-track faculty? Sadly, most Americans are more interested in landscaping and the quality of the campus gym than educational quality, so they don't ask important questions when shopping for schools and get ripped off. Many universities bank on this. Personally, I think the biggest bang for the money are liberal arts schools with no grad students and few TAs. The ones in rural America are typically cheaper. You will actually learn how to write and to think. The other thing, don't get freaked out by sticker shock and apply only to inexpensive schools, especially for profit online schools, which are almost always a ripoff. Apply for financial aid at the best school possible. You may find that you get a great deal. Story 67. In the computer repair industry, we don't get paid to write code or manually fix your computer. We get paid to 1. Pop in a disk that runs 5 different antivirus programs that you can buy yourself. 2. Outsource the work to some guy in India that connects remotely to the computer and runs a bunch of scripts that basically do number 1, so he and I can do other stuff like answer dumb questions on the phone. 3. Set up your computer with maximum optimization for $40 by letting the computer perform its own updates just like it would do at your house. TLDR, you can save yourself a lot of money in computer-related services if you just do a damn Google search. Bonus hot secret. Techs that handle your data absolutely see your adult content, naughty photos, anything. We even look for it sometimes. Outsourced, remote techs in India do it the most. We're paid really well not to behave maliciously. Be nice to us. Source: I repair computers for a company in Halloween colors. Story 68. I work in home base. We are not a DIY store. We're a home decorating store. There is a key difference. We supply everything you need to paint your house, hang up picture frames, dust the shelves, give yourself extra storage. We do not sell very specific items, whereas other stores like Wix, they sell you everything you could ever want to have in wood, screws, etc. You name it, they've got it. Now I have 2 tips to the general public. 1. Be ready to be disappointed when you check stock on our website and you come in store and we don't have it. But it says you've got 20 in stock. I know what it says, but when the company was founded and the website was built, they were cheap and lazy and didn't decide to differentiate stock in transit to stock actually in store. This means when we have 20 being delivered via truck, it still shows as stock in store. 2. Yes, we have a warehouse with stuff in it. However, Barbara, we do not have the 2 packs of effing sunflower seeds you need to complete your collection. A warehouse is a store stock that has just arrived and to be put out on shelves as soon as it comes in. The only items we store out the back in bulk are barbecues, lawnmowers, and furniture. This is because it can't all fit on the shop floor. I find myself pretending to check the warehouse when a customer doesn't believe me when I say we don't have it out in the back. Story 69. I work for a very large company that accepts donated goods for a tax write-off for the donor and then resells the goods in our stores. For the love of everything good in the world, do not try on the donated clothes before washing them. We have changing rooms in our stores, but that doesn't mean these clothes are clean. We have a no questions asked return policy, so you can take them home and wash them first. The clothes are accepted by minimum wage employees with disabilities. We do not wash them in the store. I'll say it again so everyone understands how important it is. Don't wear donated clothes from a thrift store before washing them. Well, unless you want bed bugs, lice, mites, random bodily fluids, herpes, the bubonic plague, etc., etc. You've been warned by an insider. Edit. This isn't to discourage you from shopping second-hand or thrift, as it's a great way to save money and keep things out of a landfill. The vast majority of our clothes are great, and they just need to be washed before being worn. Story 70. All salons and third-party sellers, like Target, Rite Aid, etc., mark up salon products doubly the cost of what licensed pros pay. Everyone has to mark it up exactly double. It's like a deal everyone has to keep things similarly priced at all locations. The salon owners actually get more than double because they get case discounts and don't pay tax on many items. So if you have a hairdresser friend, get them to get your products for you. Get them to get lots at once because it's also quite annoying when everyone is asking you to go to the supply house just for their stuff. I'll only get someone something but every couple months because if they ask you too much, it's annoying and I don't want to go all the time if I don't need something myself. Story 71. Call Bank of America and tell them you don't know what a charge is or dispute anything you want. They're so overwhelmed with fraud, they'll give you a temporary credit for the whole shebang, then just let it go. I had a temp credit for what they originally told me was about $80 or so. The next morning, I woke up with almost $500 in my bank. Guess the charges were just that much and had caused my account to go negative. But at the time, those charges were not authorized. If someone uses your card, like a friend, you can just say you have no idea how that charge happened because you technically didn't do it. Just be adamant that you have no idea how that happened. The way people get charged things sometimes is the person just guesses your number. If they know the first 12 digits, the last 4 are just random and so forth. Story 72. Not an industry I've ever worked in, but potentially relevant. Back during Bush recession, I showed up at a community room in a bank for a job fair sponsored by a vacuum cleaning company. The test to see if you could sell to see if applicant qualified for consideration of a possible store manager position in your hometown. If one was opened, there was to sell a half dozen or so vacs. It was strongly suggested all applicants begin by selling to all the members of their own family and close friends and neighbors because that would influence whether or not a store would be opened in what hometown. Not sure how many of the approximately 100 applicants stayed for the actual sign-up, but I wasn't one of them. Waited in the parking lot to see how many followed me out, and only 2 women did, talking and laughing about those falling for the con. No storefront for this company was opened within 45 miles of my hometown for certain. Probably not anywhere. Story 73. Your personal/private data is handled pretty recklessly by most big companies and is shared between vendors more often than you'd think. As a marketer, I can go to a number of media companies and for just a couple bucks, get really deep details about you, including your real name, employer, salary, address, IP address, buying habits, etc., from seemingly anonymous details like your Twitter handle. We currently do this to target specific customer types who would be interested in buying our products, but it would be just as easy for any HR department to do the same and dig up your life history before interviewing you. And yes, they can do this. Job applications always give an employer the right to research your history and credit. So think twice before being a big jerk on social media just because you don't use your real name. That stuff sticks with you. Story 44. The nuts you buy in California from the store that say 100% raw are lying. You have to have a very special certification to sell raw nuts. Nuts go through a pasteurization process after being taken off the tree, and that process cooks them up a bit. You aren't buying raw nuts. You're just not. Period. That organic produce you see not bagged with an organic label on it in the store could very possibly be the same as the non-organic. That little market you buy at because everything is 100% organic might be true. However, I've seen instances where the carrots being put out are just bought from a regular grocery store, non-organic but marked up and sold as such. The gluten-free section is also marked up. Things like polenta cornmeal specifically say gluten-free are marked up $2 to $3 per pack, but cornmeal has always been gluten-free. It's ground up corn, not wheat. Story 75. Worked at blah 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 auto body for most of my 20s. All of their paint packages are all exactly the same, with the exception of base/clear overalls. They all use the urethane single-stage paint. But whether you paid $2.99, $3.99, $5.99, or $8.99, it was the same process and product. Also, anyone that got talked into the added integrated clear coat got nothing but a higher bill. I worked at 3 different shops owned by the different people, and it was all the same, although one used a different paint line, meaning used different brand of paint. Most are franchised out, so it's possible that some are more honest, as they do carry the other products on hand. But corporate ones seem to be involved with this and would tell with the shop managers that this was the most cost-effective way to paint cars. On a side note, many shops I've seen also do a lot of wholesale work for dealerships, big and small, and almost all were told to pay to fix cars as cheaply as possible. I once quit a job because I was told to zip tie a bumper on because the clips were broken. The car was a brand new 2014 with 16 miles on it. My advice is to take your car to a locally owned and operated body shop. You have the option to take your car anywhere you choose if you get in an accident, and many smaller shops will waive your deductible for you as well. Ask about what products they use and do your research. Story 76. Lyft driver here. Not a secret, but some things I wish customers knew. 1. We can't see where you are. All we get is that little pin you drop when you call the ride. Make sure that thing is the right spot before you call us. If you aren't exactly in that spot, we won't find you. Your app does show where we are though, so if you can't find your driver, just open the app. 2. Don't call the driver and try explaining where you are. I can't pull up a map when I'm on the phone with you, and chances are I'm not from this area and don't know where that street is. 3. If you say you have 2 people or less, it will probably turn rideshare on without you knowing. If you're using a rideshare, you only have 2 minutes to get to us, or Lyft will tell us to cancel the ride. A lot of people don't come out in time. We don't want to have wasted our time and lost money driving to you, and you don't want to have to pay for a missed ride. So just say 4 people every time, unless you actually are trying to use rideshare. And 4, we're not required to provide you any trunk space at all. Lyft is not a taxi. I have my own crap in the trunk. I realize some people do this full time and have empty cars, but a lot of us do not. If your group and your luggage can't fit in 4 seats, call an XL. If I show up to a call and see 3 people, each with a full suitcase, I'll cancel the ride. You'll be charged and it will be your fault. Story 77. Pharmacy employees do not set prices for your medications. The price you pay is set by the pharmaceutical industry, your insurance, and by corporate. Your reaction when hearing your total, while sometimes heartbreaking, will garner you nothing in the way of a discount since we do not have the power to change the price of your drugs. We do what we can by suggesting discount cards/manufacturer coupons, but that's literally all we can do. By the way, we know you hate Obamacare. We also know that it has exactly nothing to do with how much you're paying if you aren't a member of a plan you purchased on the marketplace. Please stop blaming Obamacare for everything. Also, getting mad at pharmacy techs is almost never the correct response to any unfortunate situation you may be experiencing at the pharmacy. This will only serve to piss off the person who you want requesting your refills from your doctor in a timely manner, requesting overrides from your insurance, going the extra mile to find your medication if your pharmacy is out of it, etc. I get that life is frustrating and sometimes we're not able to get the job done, but about 80% of the time, there's honestly nothing we can do to fix the situation at that moment. Story 78. It might be late, but I can give you a couple from politics. This crap may make your blood boil. I really don't care. 1. If you call your senator because someone told you to, we don't give 2 craps. 3/4 of the calls we got when I worked in a senator's office were dumb a-holes reading off a script that a special interest group gave them. Also, look at their ratings by various groups. My boss had an A+ with the NRA. You think your little soapbox phone is going to change his mind on gun control? Be very careful who you listen to. Anyone who calls or emails you had an agenda, and they will lie to get you on their side. This applies to both sides of any argument. Second, political espionage is a thing and it's effing awesome. It's not near a house of cards as you might think, but there are lots of people listening from lots of places. I've done it. I've gathered dirt and I've caught people trying to do it to me. Third, Prepare for panty bunching. Nobody gives a F if you vote third party in the US. If you call any politician and say, "Hurdy-dur, I don't like either candidate," brilliant insight there, F-face. "So I'm gonna vote Gary Johnson, so take that." You're out on mute, and we're laughing at you while you rant. A protest vote is a wasted vote. You think you're being smart and beating our little system. Trust me, you aren't. If you comment below this with, "Well, I don't care, I'm still voting third party because I'm in good conscience, blah 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 blah," then you're a goof and a super F-face. Fourth, everything is a lie. Kids getting punched at Trump rallies? Planned by guys like me. Poor bastards don't even know what's happening. They show up pumped to volunteer or intern, but are usually crappy workers and any the piss out of anyone important. But they are usually because they're annoying. So you get your most passionate a-holes, get them pumped up with, "At this rally, you should give them a piece of your mind." Then you convince them to go up to the front row of a rally, and the rest is inevitable. You have your camera guy in the crowd focused on loudmouth, and they get punched out. Add some shaky cam and, "Oh my god, what?" Boom, you have a headline story. Finally, your protests are fake. Only one side of the political spectrum holds protests because they're naive enough to think they matter or make a difference. When you sign into a protest, your info is logged in a huge data bank, and that will be used to target you with phone calls and political ads. Then that info is sold because you'd be surprised how much your name, address, and phone number is worth. I was going to close with a generalized "stop protesting things, nobody cares," but every group that annoys me is shooting themselves in the foot, or cops in the body, and making themselves look like crap, so carry on. Story 79. I used to work in admissions for the Art Institutes, for profit chain school, not the museum and art school in Chicago. The school is bad, but the little known is that if you interview for acceptance, admissions reps are supposed to lie to you about a multitude of things. When I worked there, we were supposed to guilt trip you into applying. "Oh, I thought you were serious about school." Well, you can start at a community college if you want. I guess you're just not serious about your passion. It's great you want to help people as a nurse, but it seems like you're letting your dreams die, etc. If guilting doesn't work, we flat out lied about how long it would take to get a degree, the types of projects students would be doing, and that you're a talented artist. Some of this is public knowledge after the school system had the most expensive out-of-court settlement for an educational body in U.S. history. The school is trying to rebrand as totally transparent, but admissions still has numbers to make, and most people in the department will say whatever they have to make the sale. P.S. If you've ever been spammed with phone calls by AI and ask we don't call you, unless you specifically ask to be placed on do not call, you'll be categorized as not interested and be placed back in the call rotation in as little as 5 days. Story 80. Posted this in a comment already, but here's my answer. I've worked in the transportation industry and regularly communicated with other employees about products of theirs which had become damaged. 2 companies in particular disgusted me, Campbell's and Nestle. My problem is with Campbell's and Nestle, a reason for each. I saw a full load of potatoes delivered to a Campbell's owned/affiliated facility, essentially a factory. The thing is, the potatoes were rotten and growing things. Originally, they wouldn't take the load. A few hours later, the truck was quietly unloaded. What they did with those potatoes is a mystery, but chances are one of you ingested some. As for Nestle, on multiple occasions, we had a few bags of dry cat food that had been torn open with bugs and insects inside. They asked us to return the product to their bagging facility. Story 81. Dan Murphy's employees don't give half a crap about price matching. It doesn't personally cost them any money. My brothers-in-laws own a pub and bottle shop. A huge Dan Murphy's opened up literally next door, and suddenly the bottle shop wasn't doing so good. Bottle shop ran out of VB, cue comments about Victoria Bitter being crap, so father-in-law puts up big sign. VB slaps X amount of dollars where X was lower than the wholesale price of VB. Father-in-law walks into Dan Murphy's and buys a slab of VB, asking them to beat that price there. Points to his own sign. Staff don't care. Lower price. He goes back to the pub and gets each employee in turn to change out their uniform and go buy a case of VB. 15 minutes and 20 cases of VB later, he takes the sign down and the regular price is back. He's done it a few times since, but not too often as it would piss off his suppliers. Story 82. When you ship a box through UPS and probably most shipping companies, it actually doesn't get handled too much. It's unloaded and loaded by hand, and that's pretty much it. The only other time is if it gets damaged. Someone will come retape it or rebox it. So putting fragile on the box is pretty meaningless. It rides on belts most of the time that go uphill and downhill. Boxes tumble over one another and fall off the conveyor sometimes. The conveyors jam up and crush boxes regularly. It's not like someone personally carries your box from one side of the building to the other. The only boxes that get personal attention are high-value boxes. You have to pay way extra for that. Your brand new iPhone or iPod or laptop just had a 50-pound box of dog food fall on it. Sorry. The hubs are very dirty too. There's black dust everywhere because the boxes rub the material off the belts. Plus, the only cleaning is sweeping. So when a loader/unloader spills their snacks or have dog dew on their shoes or throws up, it gets in the trucks and stays there. I've picked up boxes in a truck to find pizza stuck to it. Workers also spit everywhere, even with tobacco. It's so gross, so don't put your package on your kitchen counter/table. Open it, leave the box on the floor, and wash your hands. Story 83. The Muscular Dystrophy Association hires third-party phone banks to call local businesses and ask them to participate in their lockup, where business folks are encouraged to be imprisoned at a local restaurant until their co-workers or employees raise the bail to donate. When I interviewed for one of these phone bank jobs, I was actively encouraged to lie and say the people I was calling were recommended by fellow business professionals or even members of the city council so they would feel watched and pressured to agree. I was also told to say I was calling from the restaurant the lockup would take place in, not the charity, so people would think they won something, i.e. I'm calling with Outback Steakhouse. Story 84. I work in an actuarial firm that consults to government municipalities. Part of our job requires census files from clients, and we ask for a unique identifier for each employee/retiree while emphatically telling them not to give us full social security numbers for obvious liability/privacy reasons. Year after year, about half of our clients completely ignore that request and continue giving us everyone's social security number anyways. And these are not small employers. A lot of these clients have over 1,000 members, some over 10,000. If we didn't actively delete them, our private servers would be jam-packed with hundreds of thousands of social security numbers without these people's permission or even their knowledge. The reckless manner in which these government employers toss around SSNOs leaves their employees terribly vulnerable to identity theft. It drives me nuts. Story 85. Worked in laundry and housekeeping of a hotel over one summer. Here are some things. The comforters were washed annually. Curtains and drapes do not get washed. Some of the housekeepers didn't bother changing the sheets either. A lot of times to clean a mirror/faucet, they'd sprinkle water at it and wipe. The tumblers in the rooms were cleaned with a dirty rag, not a dishwasher. It's all about the appearance of cleanliness, not actual cleanliness. That would take forever. Also, one of my laundry coworkers would just throw trash bags of towels into her car and dump them because she didn't feel like washing them. It was a fun job. Story 86. Fast food workers will F with your food for no reason, or very little reason. A waiter could get your order wrong, give the wrong order to the cook, and when you get the wrong order and ask to get it fixed, the cook will F with your food just because they have to remake it. No other reason. Not even your fault. You could leave a good tip all the time and it won't make a bit of difference. Here's a list of crap I've seen. While working in a movie theater, someone peed in the popcorn butter, a big container of it, so at least it was diluted by the time it was used, I guess. Knew a guy who'd wipe his ass with his finger and slip his finger into a drink he was pouring, just for kicks. Crap got dropped on the floor a lot. Guess where it went? You got it, right back on display. Remember that next time you bite into a pretzel or hot dog at a movie theater. Pizza delivery. Drivers remember who doesn't tip. They will shake up your soda so they explode when you open them. They will turn the pizza box upside down so the cheese gets everywhere. They will move your order to the bottom of their list so you're the last delivery. Also, had a cook who would regularly pick his nose and put boogers in the pizza. Just some 15-year-old booger rebel who thought he was sticking it to the man. Unfortunately, he was fired after a couple weeks for just not showing up to work. I have other stories, many stories in fact, but I just wanted to let you know your food is being effed with. You can swing things in your favor by tipping well and not being an a-hole, but sometimes there's just a crappy teenager who hates their job and messes with your food for no good reason. Story 87. The produce in your produce bags, apples, oranges, potatoes, tomatoes, etc., has been reworked, and by that I mean the bags are taken to the back or done out in the open to take out the bad ones and refill with the good ones to sell the whole bag and reduce losses. When I used to do this, I would usually intentionally refill bags so big they would sell almost immediately because instead of 10 pounds of apples, you're probably getting 12 to 14 per bag because I had to toss out so many bad ones. Fun fact. Produce people hate watermelon season, especially when you get in about 50 pallets of them at a time. When those go bad, it's awful. Second fun fact, if you see fruit flies in the produce section, that indicates that something below them is off. Be extra careful when picking out your bags. A good produce section has 0 fruit flies. Story 88. Busboys and waiters/waitresses at restaurants often use the same towel to wipe down dirty tables all day, without washing the rag or changing it out for a clean one. They usually stink horribly and are a light gray color after even an hour. They're probably one of the most unsanitary parts of a restaurant, and they're being used to wipe down your tables and menus. Workers are supposed to change them out and soak them in sanitizer, but working at minimum wage with typically poor tips doesn't really motivate employees to put in extra effort. Moral of the story? If you drop food on your table, don't eat it. Wash your hands after handling the menu and not before. And don't rest the eating surface of your silverware on the table. It's more disgusting than I can explain you in words. Source: worked restaurant jobs in college.